Well, welcome back everyone. Today's video is all about a very specific method of fishing that isn't really looked at so much in the UK as an effective method, and I've used it quite a bit. Well, I say quite a bit, it's something I keep forgetting about really, and it's a method that can, if it's used in the right place, in the right way, it can be a very effective method for fishing for bigger fish and bass, and that is the bait slider. So this video is all about that really. So I'm going to show you how to set it up and then how to actually get your bait to go out and the gear you need for it to actually work effectively. Because I've seen a lot of people do it before and they haven't quite done it right because they just don't know, and then it's not really worked effectively, and then people see it as a waste of time. So let's get on with it. Right, so a slider. What is it? It is a method, which I'll show you in detail now, but it's a method that was, I'm pretty sure it was designed and made in South Africa. So it's a method of getting a live bait or a big bait that's too big to cast, either a specific distance, whether you're casting over a bank or in any troughs, or just to get it well out of casting range. And or put it this way, it's that effective of a method in the right situation where it's banned out in South Africa in competitions because it is so effective. So when you buy them, it will come in a pack. So you'll have the slider, which, as you can see, is a bar of metal, which one end it drops down. You can buy them with weights on and without. This one here has got the weight on, as you can see, a bit of a ring, and then a swivel. And then the other end, it comes across, and then it comes up and it's sort of like a spring, like a coil on itself, and then it goes back down and hooks over the main bar. Now these sliders are designed to go out and then not come back, which I'll explain about in a bit when I'm actually showing you how to actually send them out. So in the pack will be your slider, and then another thing that comes in the pack with the slider is your ring, your metal ring there, and a swivel, as you can see that. Now that is to stop the slider at a certain point or going down to your lead. So what I'll do now is just talk a bit about the gear that you kind of not necessarily need. There's only one thing that you do kind of need in a sense, or maybe not need, but it's a benefit. So what I'll do now is talk about the two different setups I like to use when using a slider. Right, so the first more sort of all-round setup I use for a slider is just a standard beach caster with, this is a bit of a heavier rod, and then I got that with a multiplier filled with 35-pound mono and a 80-pound shock leader. You might think 35-pound mono is heavy, which it is. I'd never fish that in any other fishing situation, but there's one very specific reason that I use a heavy mono when I'm fishing for, let's say, a bigger fish, is because when you cast your line out and you send your slider out, there's always a chance that a fish is going to pick your bait up while the slider is rubbing on your main line. So as if you can imagine, if that fish is going to grab your bait, hook itself, and then head into a rocky ground or kelp or whatever, your main line is the first and the most weakest point that it is going to touch them rocks. So I prefer a heavier line just to sort of up my chances of actually landing a big fish in a rocky ground. And also a type of line that is quite important, and I was taught by a guy in South Africa called Sean May, who is, he's got it to a fine art, like watching them guys, not just Sean, but just guys genuine South Africa, it's a day-to-day thing. Watch them send out slides in a massive raging surf, and just watching that bait just shoot out there through the surf is incredible. So one thing he taught me, which I've noticed it makes a difference, is having a mono with stretch to it. Now I know all mono has stretch, but if you can use a line with slightly more stretch than usual, that's better, because what you'll find is, if I just quickly put the slider on, right, so that is a slider now onto my main line. So on my right hand side, so this direction is my weight, and that direction is my tip section, so your rod end, and then you want your slider running that way, so it's going out to see that direction. So as it's sliding out, and then the swell hits it and pull, what it's going to do is trying to push it back to you. It'll turn on itself and catch. You can still pull it back, as you can see, but it's surprising how the swell won't do that. It hasn't got that much resistance, and if it's in surf, it's not a continuous pressure, because as the surf goes back out, the slider keeps going, and then as the surf comes back in, or the swell, it stops, and then keeps going, stops, keep going. I'll show you how to put it on in a bit when I show you how to slide them out. But what I wanted to talk about was using a stretchy mono will help you send it out quicker, because what you'll find is, like you'll see in a minute, so when you send them out, you got to basically jig the rod to actually get it working out. So a stretchy mono will obviously stretch when you jig the rod, and then as you sort of release a little bit of tension in the line, the line will obviously pull back together, and then it will pull it towards your lead, and then push your slider up with it. So it doesn't sound like it'll work, but it's surprising the difference it makes. So it's quite hard to explain, but when it's if you have a go, you'll probably notice it. So as you jig the rod, it'll push it back out a little bit as you're jigging it. So that's the main method I like to use for my slider. Most of the time when I'm using a slider in the UK, it's only really with a live bait. I don't really use them with dead baits, because I can't think of a situation where you need a bait big enough that you can't cast for anything you're going to catch in the UK. The only situation I think it might work well in is Scotland for the skate, but realistically, although they're big fish, you don't need a big bait. And if it takes a bit of a longer time for your bait to get to the bottom, you're just wasting your fishing time, because your bait has to be on the bottom with them, because they're not going to come up a couple hundred foot in the water. So yeah, I only really use live baits. So if I'm fishing for, let's say I'm fishing somewhere that's a bit snaggy, I'm fishing for a big eel, say, I'll fish heavier. And then if I'm fishing purely for bass, I'll use a different setup, which I'll show you now. Right, so if I'm using a slider and I'm just using a small live bait, or I'm targeting a bass or even codling, let's say, I'll use just a lighter setup. These are my Tronix Xenon C6s. I got them with a small fixed ball on a low reel setup. And on these, you can use the bigger sliders, but you can also buy little dinky ones, little small ones there, as you can see. Now these are quite good, the little small ones. They're more than heavy enough. And then I use just lighter mono. There's only like 40 pound on there, down to a 5.0. And then the same again, everything's the same with these. You run down to your ring there, and then a small piece of mono then down to your lead. Just for the purpose of this video, I've just tied them off to my lead. Well, I've tied a clip on, but normally I use a weak link. So I come down from my shock leader, down to the ring, and then a small piece of mono to a clip, and then your lead. You can tie directly to the lead, but if I'm out there fishing and I'm just using this method as I'm fishing, I'll put a weak link on, because if you did hook a bass or a big eel or whatever, you don't want to lose it. So you want a weak link on there just to sort of guarantee you're going to get that fish in. So what I'll do now is run through how I would bait up a live bait or a dead bait with the slider. Right, so when using a live bait for a slider, there's two ways of attaching the same method, but two different materials, if you like, to attach them. If you would have watched my video of how to target bass, you would have seen me do this with live mullet. It's the exact same method. So it's done with a circled hook, and let's get one up. Let's get one. So the one I use for my bigger fish, I'll use a 6.0 circle hook. And depending on the size of fish I'm targeting, if I'm fishing for, generally speaking, I'd fish like 100 pound if I'm fishing for eels, because most of the time with circled hooks, it's going to be lipped hooked, so you're not really too bothered about it cutting you off. So generally speaking, 100 pound mono is perfect. And like I said, down to a 6.0. And then what you want to do, this is my favorite way of attaching a live bait onto your hook. It keeps it alive for as long as you want. So I got a small loop I tied there with braid. That's 80 pound braid. And then what you want to do is put your hook over the top of the two loop, so over the top of the loop, and then I'll pass one end over the hook and then back through the other, which then, and well, you pull that down tight, and that just attaches your loop onto your hook, like so. If you can pick that up. Right, so now that's attached, that's the first step done. So that's the loop attached onto the hook. Now the next step is attaching that onto your live bait, obviously. And for this video, I'm not actually out fishing today. I'm only just out doing this video, so I haven't actually got any live baits. But so what I've done, I've brought some mackerel just to sort of act as the live bait. So what you want to do first, let's put that down, is get a weight with a gripper. You can just use the gripper before you put it onto the lead, but it's what I got with me today. And you want to pull the loop out so you've got one end. Now this does take a bit of practice, but after a couple of times you'll get there. I hold the lead in my right hand, and then I put the braid on top of the end of the wire. I pull the hook down tight so it keeps it in tension. Then I get my live bait, and then I go above the eye, and then push it right the way through. Now it doesn't actually harm the fish where it's going to kill it. This is the most effective way of putting a live bait on. So you got the two ends going through. Then you want to hook the hook through the other loop. So it's, as you can see, it's just hanging on there now. Then you want to spin your hook. Keep spinning it until there's a fair bit of tension there. And then put the hook underneath the spun part of the braid. And what you can do is hook the hook through the braid again. Just a bit of reinsurance is not going to come off, and as you can see there, it's got loads of movement. So if that was a live fish, it'd swim around, and it's not really affecting the mackerel too much, or the live bait too much. So yeah, that's how to attach a live bait onto a circle hook. Now that is a very effective way. So we'll do it again now, so you can see again my other one. So this one is for my sort of my bass one, if you like, which is lighter. So I'm going to use it small. I got a sardine, so I personally use a slightly smaller live bait with a bass. You don't need to. They have got, obviously, as we all know, big mouths, big appetite, so they'll eat a big fish. But I like a small live bait just purely for the fact of they get in their mouth quicker. So I'll put a smaller loop on there, being a smaller bait. Now on here, I'm just going to use a sardine. So again, lead in my right hand, pull the braid down tight over the wire, going through above the two eyes, pop it right the way through, hold that, pull your lead out, and then get your hook, put it back through, give it a quick spin, and then back underneath. Like so. That is perfect. Right, so there is my two baits done for the video. Now one thing I will mention is whenever I'm out fishing and I'm going to be using live baits, whether I'm going to be sliding them out or just flicking them off the rocks, like here is a perfect place for it, just flicking off a live whiting, brilliant for the bass. You're not always lucky enough to have rock pools around you that are big enough to keep your fish alive. So these, the Tronix folding buckets, are absolutely brilliant for it, and they come with a little plastic coil with some rope on, and you just clip the clip onto the rope, and you can drop it over the edge, fill it with water. Say you're fishing somewhere like Ogmore Deeps. I don't particularly keep the fish in them pools because there might not be much oxygen in there to keep them alive for long. And also, say I want to walk away from the water to get the, say I want to get a bit of height, so I walk up the rock slightly, and you're walking up with your live bait, it's hung there, it's going to be kicking, it's a bit of strain on the fish, and it's out the water obviously. But this way, you fill it with water, put your fish in there, you take it up with you, leave it in there while you're putting that onto your main line, and then throw it in. So it's in the water as long as possible to obviously keep it alive. So that's one quick thing I'll say. These things are brilliant. The Tronix folding buckets, they are perfect for this situation. Right, let's get on to some sliding. Right, so we're ready to send it out. So I've got my main line, obviously with my shock leader on, running down to a ring there, short piece of mono and my lead. But like I said, if I'm actually out fishing using this method, I'll fish with a weak link to withstand my, well, to obviously keep a highest chance of landing a big fish if there's rocks around. And distance, just for this video, I'm only going to lob it up there. But distance wise, it purely depends on the ground I'm fishing over and where I'm fishing to. Like say if it was a little gully there or bank or whatever, I'd fish the lead onto that or into the gully or whatever. But just for this video, I'm just going to cast it out blindly. And it's important to just give it a bit of time, wait for that lead to settle down into the ground. I'm just going to slowly pull it, or gently, just to make sure that lead grips in nice. And now one other thing, what I forgot to mention about, was I like to use a heavy lead. I will never use anything less than a 7 ounce. Normally I'd use a 8 or 9 ounce. I've used 12 ounces before, and that's only for the purpose of making sure when you're jigging it to get a slider out there, is you're not going to trip your lead. And also a lead with really strong wires on it. Like if I'm going to aim to slide a live bait or dead bait as far as I can get one, I'll use a 12 ounce lead, because there's obviously a lot of time working the slider, and obviously the more time you spend working a slider, the higher the chance of tripping your lead, especially if there's a tiny bit of tide there. Right, so that's in there. That lead's good to go now. So I'll come over to you, showing you how to put it on this. And now we're ready to slide it out. One thing you want to make sure is you want to keep your lead, well, your line fairly tight over the whole time you're doing this. So what I do, I knock the reeling free spool, don't let it go too slack, sort of point my rod in the opposite direction it's facing, grab your line, like I say, keep it tight. I just put it over my finger, my middle finger, hold my rod there. There's my main line going out. You want to get your slider with your dead manky mackerel on it, and I just clip it on. Right, so if you can pick that up, that's my main line there. So here's my lead going out to sea. So I want my slider facing that way, so that way going out to sea. So I've opened the clip up, then I have the clip, so I have my main line in my left hand, my slider in my right, I have my slider on my side of the main line, put it over the top, you want to hook it in, and then you just literally just spin it around through the coils. Should only be like 4 times. Now that's on, and always remember to put that clip on, otherwise you're going to lose your fish. So there we are, so that's on and ready to slide. And like I said again, keep that main line tight. If I was using a live bait, I would have the bucket with me, but obviously I've just got a dead bait, so I'm just going to keep my line tight, hold my hook link in my hand here. Now keep that line nice and tight for the whole time, and then let it go. Now it's going to slide out until it hits the water, and now is the point where you want to start working it. So until the point where your bait disappears, you want to keep fairly. I'm hoping you can actually see this because the sun's quite bright. You want to keep working it quite aggressively, and that is going out there. I'm hoping you can actually see this because it's going out quite fast, but it's right in direction with the sunlight, well, the sun. But it's going out now, not far off the point where it's going to disappear under the surface of the water. So keep jigging it quite aggressively, a nice consistent rhythm to it. Now I can't see the slider anymore, it's gone. So it's already gone out the distance that my line's poking into the water, which is quite a fair way actually. So just keep it going for a few minutes or a couple of minutes or whatever. Right, so I've been doing that for a bit now. And what you want to do now is slow your motions down. Another method, you'll see them doing it because it's just a bit easier on yourself, is put your rod over your shoulder, grab your reel, and just stand there for a bit, giving it this, giving it that. And obviously depending on how far your lead is determines the time that you do this. And also something I forgot to mention was if you're using braid, I don't personally like using braid for a slider, but because you haven't got stretch in it, and if a fish takes it and you're into rocks, braid being braid on rock, it doesn't really go too good, so you end up getting cut off easier. But if you are going to use braid, say you're fishing over sand, it's still fine. Then you just got to work it for ages. So if I was using the slider and I was using braid, I'd slide it for at least, I'd say 5 to 7 minutes, so say 6 minutes. I'd keep it going for quite a while. Now you can buy sliders that are designed for live baits, where they don't only go one way, they can go back and forth. So you sort of flick your lead out and slide them down, the fish can go up and down as it pleases. But these ones only go one direction, so keep it going. Right, so that's been doing a little while there. I'm not going to go on for ages because I'm not like fishing, but so that is, I wouldn't say that's out as far as my lead yet. I would, if I was actually fishing, I'd keep it going for a little while longer. And then while that's up there and it's fishing, you want to put it in your stand, or a lot of the time I'll have a third rod with me for this method, and I'll just wedge it in the rocks, set my ratchet, set it quite tight, and make sure the tip of your rod is fairly tight, because the bite detection isn't like a normal bite detection off of a rig, say, because the fish might take that bait halfway out, and then you're not necessarily going to get the fish drop you slack or pick your bait up and buckle the rod over, because it can only go one way, and it might go left or right, so your bites might be sort of quite bouncy. So keep an eye on the rod, because you might not get much of an indication of a bite. And then when you do get a bite, don't strike, just wind down, and if you can't feel the fish straight away, that means that your slider hasn't got down to your lead. So just keep winding fairly fast, and when you do feel the weight of the fish, just wind down until you feel a solid weight, and then just lift up slowly and set them hooks. But I'm gonna reel this in now. Like I said, it's not all the way up there yet, so I can't even feel the bait just now. Right, so I felt the bait now. I can feel the mackerel there. So it's went out a fair bit actually. I wasn't even jigging it for long, or working it, whatever you want to call it. Right, so yeah, that's how to work a slider. What I'll do now is show you again how to do it, but I'll use my other setup rather than this one. As you can see, it's obviously slid down from reeling it in. So the whole point of that ring is, if, say for instance, your lead broke off, that ring is going to stop that slider coming off and stop you losing your fish. So yeah, that's basically it really. It's quite a simple method. Main thing to know is just to keep working it, and you'll keep it going. Well, shall we do it again? But this time I'll use my fixed bore rod that I'd typically use for bass. We'll get that up there now. The mono on this reel isn't that heavy. It's not as heavy as I'd normally use. It's only like, I think it's 15 or 18 pound mono, whatever it is. But if I was using a slider, even for bass, I'd still fish fairly heavy. Not as heavy, because if I was fishing for a bass over clean ground, you don't really need it too much. And bass are clean fighters, and I mean that when you hook a bass, 9 times out of 10 it'll come to the surface. So eels are probably the only thing. Even then, eels come up, but I still prefer heavy mono just to sort of make sure I land that fish. So I loosen the drag off. That lead's set in nice. Loosen that drag. Keep that line tight. Lower it down. Where's it to? There it is. Got my main line. Tighten that drag back up. Oh, so this one's going to be a bit harder to see because it's a smaller slider. But like I said before, got my main line in my left hand, slider in my right, and then the slider is on my side of the main line. Then I hook it over. I'll unclip it first. Right, so wrap that slider around. Now this slider, you spin it around anti-clockwise, this little one, and most of the time you've got to spin them clockwise. Clip that on. Right, now that's on. It's kind of easier with a fixed bore, because as you can see, it's easier to keep your line tight while holding your bait. I always tend to keep the bait in my left hand, keep the line tight, let that slide until it hits the water, I don't like to use a slider much when I'm up high. I prefer them on a flat beach because you'll find, depending on the weight of the bait, they sort of hang. But as you can see, that's going out now. So keep jigging it, and it's going to send your bait out. As you can see, obviously with the line jigging up and down, it's sending that slider out to the point where it's almost out of sight. One thing I will mention is they're not the most effective method in tide, because as you can imagine, if I've got tide going from left to right, I'm gonna have a big bow on my line. So that slider is going to go out halfway through that bow and then hold there. It's not going to keep going because in effect, it's going to have to go against the tide, which is impossible. So that's the only reason they're not the most effective method in the UK, because we've got tides. Like in the Bristol Channel, for instance, there's tide a lot of the time. Thankfully, there's no tide there now, so I kind of picked this morning because it's not too big of a tide. There's not really much run there, so it's kind of working well. Right, so that's that done. We'll reel that in now. Right, so that's pretty much it for this video. I can't really think of much else to say with the slider because it's quite a simple method. As long as you keep working it, use a nice heavy lead to hold it in. Like for instance, then I'm only using a 6-ounce lead on this lighter rod, and it just didn't work. I just tripped the lead straight away, really. That's why it didn't really work that effectively. But if I was using it in an actual situation where I'm fishing, I would use a 7-ounce on this rod, which is too heavy for the rod, really. But I'm not casting fast, so it's fine. As long as you slowly cast down, you can catch quite a big lead on a light rod. So that's pretty much it for this video now. We're pretty much done. I only really wanted to be a simple little video about the slider. So always remember, fish a fairly heavy lead and some strong wires to pin it there as you work in your slider. Use a weak link. I definitely recommend it, unless you're fishing on a pure sand beach, no rocks in sight, so you're fine. But 9 times out of 10, I'm going to use to be honest, even if I'm fishing over sand, I'll use one anyway, just in case, dead lines or the odd rock here and there, you never know. Keep your slider facing the right way, keep working it properly. So start off quite aggressive little jigs, and then when the bait is out of sight, slow it down, and long sort of motions up and down. And if you send it out sort of more than 60 yards, 70 yards, say, go for like 5 minutes. Anything more, go between 5 and 7 minutes, or even longer, depending on whatever you're doing, really. But if you want to have a go, you sort of get your own little ways of doing things. And again, stretch your line to send it up nice. So yeah, I think that's about it for this video. I hope you've found it useful. If there's anything that you think I could have added, let me know, and I can always explain it in the comment if you want to ask a question. I have been a bit slow on replies recently on comments, because I've been quite busy with work and everything, so it's just finding the time. There never seems to be enough hours in the day. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. That would be a massive help, and a like. So yeah, as for now, we're all done. So you'll see me use the slider in my next few videos. Well, I'll use it quite often now I've sort of shown it. So you can see it in action and hopefully catching me some fish. I've used it a lot out in Africa when fishing with Sean. We've had some really big raggies, bronzies, duck bills and stuff. It's just been a very, extremely useful and effective method. So yeah, but as for now, we are all done. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.